In this video, I'm going to take a look at the book Sweet Anticipation, Music and the Psychology of Expectation by David Huron. A very dense and scientific university textbook that if you were studying music cognition, you would read this. If you're making music, there are ideas in here that are extremely interesting, and even though I couldn't understand a lot of the book, maybe less than 10%, 5%, what I did understand from this book really changed how I was thinking about music. The crux of this book is that when you listen to music, your brain is anticipating all the time, expecting things to happen. And the composer can use this sense of expectation, anticipation, to give you certain emotional reactions. So if your expectations are fulfilled, it feels good, it's familiar. If your expectation is not fulfilled, then it can give you a sense of even shock, or it can result in other emotions too, sadness. It's not that obvious how, but this kind of fulfillment of expectations or delaying of the expectations has a lot of different emotional results. And the book shows, with a very lot of scientific research and scientific background, it shows how music works in tandem with the way the brain works. One example here. 5, 9, 8, 3, 5. 5, 9, 8, 3, 5. 5, 9, you continue. By the third time, your short-term memory is able to predict the pattern. So what he says about this is, by the time you arrived at the third repetition of this sequence, you could probably read the numbers without looking at the text. After 2 repetitions, the numbers are present in your short-term memory. These are expectations that arise from brief, even single exposures. But they're also volatile. It's unlikely you will retain this sequence beyond a few minutes. Since these expectations arise and decay dynamically, we might call them dynamic expectations. As the events of a musical work unfold, the work itself engenders expectations that influence how the remainder of the work is experienced. So that's very interesting. How you make your music is influencing the set of expectations the person listening has. You can do almost anything in terms of timbre or harmony or melody if you have a really strong repetitive rhythm that is making it clear that something's about to happen now, and almost anything can happen. If your rhythm's not so strong and you have, say, a chaotic kind of rhythm that's hard to predict, and chaotic melody and harmony, it's all hard to predict, no one's really going to be able to follow it. If they can't follow it, they're not going to enjoy it. Now, there is that familiarity breeds liking. So if you get someone to listen to it over and over again, maybe they will start to like it. But how are you going to do that? You're going to strap people down and force them to listen? No, you can't do that. So that means you've got to get the balance right. And that's a really hard balance to get these days. If you want to be an innovative and unique music maker who's making things no one ever heard before, there will be unfamiliarity. A lot of people probably won't like it because it'll be too different. But if you don't do that, you'll be sacrificing your own unique vision, your own internal sense of what things should be, and it will be too much like someone else's music, other influences, and it will be boring. Even if people like it, it won't last that long. That's my view of this. So the rule of 3, back to the rule of 3, the way I heard it, it's the first time you hear something, it's new. The second time, it's familiar. And by the third time, if it hasn't changed, it will become boring. You can find this in a lot of music. If you listen out for it, you will hear something, let's call it A, and it repeats, so you hear A, But then you hear something else. You don't hear A again, you hear B, let's say. It changes. So then you might hear B again. And now you've heard something different. You might come back to A again. But it might not be exactly the same as A before. The arrangement might be different. It might have other instruments with it. You might hear that again, and then B, B. So A, B, B, A, B, B. You've heard the whole thing twice. And now you've heard that whole thing twice, you're going to hear something else, C. Okay, then after that you might come back to A again. It might be different, maybe only once, A and then B. So as you go along hearing the material, the sense of expectation is being played with so that you're just getting the right amount of repetitions. Not enough, it'll be too unfamiliar. Too much, it gets boring. The balance of this and getting it right is how to make something really, really engaging and good for people to listen to. Now, my friend and a great musician, Ralph Clarkson, he told me the other day that there's the rule of 3 in comedy as well, which is very interesting. So if you have a joke in comedy, the way that it works often is that it has this rule of 3 as well. Like, for example, just as an example, a duck walks into a bar and says, "Have you got any grapes?" And the barman says, "Grapes? This is a bar." "No, we don't." So the duck goes out, and on the next day the duck walks into the bar again and goes, "Have you got any grapes?" And the barman says, "Look, I told you yesterday, we don't have any grapes. If you ask me again, I'm going to nail your beak to the bar." And the duck leaves. And then the next day the duck comes back in and he says, "Have you got any nails?" And the barman says, "No." So he says, "Well, have you got any grapes?" So the jokes, the really common thing in comedy is that the jokes set something up the first time, the second time, and then the third time your expectation is flipped, and that's where humor is. Humor and music work along the same lines, setting up expectations and then flipping them. And you can use that to make your music better. You hear something once, you hear it again, great. Now the third time, flip the expectations and either put it in a different context or do something else. And the skill, of course, is in the other thing that you do that has to somehow relate. That's the video for today. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next video.